Holy smoke. I had that planned. Holy smoke.
Holy smoke with blowing smoke.
Right. So
Blowing smoke
Todd,
with holy smoke. How are you, Steve?
good man. Before we get into your new music and we got John with us and everything, I wanted to ask you because I talked to you a little bit about it, but maybe you could tell my listeners how the whole reunion thing went with Shake the Faith. Jesse was on the show and he talked about it, but I figured I would give you a chance. And did you have any memories about that night that you want to share with us?
Oh, it was cathartic and beautiful and so wonderful. John was there, so he was in the audience and he was helping record it. We actually recorded it and have video.
Nice.
Needs to be edited and sounds fantastic. There will be a live video coming out eventually. Just life and other things getting in the way of finishing the project. But no, Steve, thanks for asking. It was phenomenal. Your interview before the show was really appreciated, and people commented on that. Just a beautiful night. I mean, it was a reunion of souls. It was a lot of us coming out to shows for the first time since COVID kind of wound down. If you remember, that was November 21, almost a year and a half ago. So right
Wow, was
about
that
then,
long ago? Oh
it
my God, I
was
didn't even realize it was that
it was
long
it
ago.
was November 21, and we talked to you in October. And if you remember back then, Dez had only done a couple of shows at Magic Room. If things were starting to open up again, a lot of people were still, masking and just getting second vaccination boosters and things like that. So the world was a different place. But we just we needed to play. We needed to do it. There was timing with
Yeah.
Jesse's stuff with Diablo Gatto. I had just recouped from cancer treatment. I think we talked a little bit about that. So it was kind of Jesse and I both coming out of those experiences, and
Yeah.
it was wonderful. Just a huge WBCN crowd there, a lot of people from back in the day, and then our friends Little Billy Lost as the opener. Just capped off an amazing cathartic evening. It was really wonderful.
What was it like playing with those guys again, Casey and Jesse?
It's always amazing. I mean, it's just been that way since the day we set up and played. I mean, that band was shot out of a fucking cannon. It was just, I get chills just saying that. I mean, and maybe we can get to that story because it's a really, really good one. How I end up there and how that band gets off the ground and like, the trajectory, you were there watching it, and it came and went. It was three absolutely rock and roller coaster years, but wow, what an experience.
Um, I wanted to ask you, Todd, and John, we can get you in on this too. Like, where exactly did you grow up? Are you from Maine? Because I know you live up there now. Did you grow up there?
I did, yeah. So my roots of my mom's family are Denver and Pueblo. They're called.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. So I was born in Denver, moved at a young age. My mom remarried when I was really, really young. So my adopted dad, Erickson, got a job in the Detroit area in the auto industry. He was working for a parts manufacturer that ended up buying some industrial property in Rochester and Dover, New Hampshire. So when I was about 8, say, 71, maybe 70, yeah, 71, we moved to Maine, and we moved to a podunk town. I basically grew up in a barn. I literally had a big farmhouse with a
From
barn.
Detroit to a
I
barn.
barn guy, and it just created this opportunity for me to live out the fantasy of being a kid with, dirt bikes and bicycles and outdoors and then rock and roll. I had
So,
a place to play and jam and meet people and
right.
hang out.
So you didn't really get to experience Detroit at all. You weren't there very long.
No, really young, in and out in a couple of years. I think we moved there. I was preschool, like, I remember going to like kindergarten. There's this funny story of me having kind of my first girlfriend, second grade sweetheart or something. My mom likes to tell, but No, we moved to. I was in Maine by, I. It must have been third grade,
You,
Steve. You know, 8 years old or something.
you
So
said
third.
71, which is funny because I just had Robert Duncan, who was the managing editor of Korean Magazine in Detroit in 1971. It's so
I
weird
can't
that,
wait to. I really want to listen to that. I can't wait. I just haven't had time since you posted it. I can't wait to take it in.
yeah, if you're a Lester Bangs fan, it's a must listen for sure.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Johnny, you from Maine too?
No, actually, I grew up for the most part in central Massachusetts, in Oxford, Massachusetts, and throughout school, I was your typical band nerd. I was, aligned with all the people in the band room, marching band, orchestra. You
Nothing's changed. Nothing's changed.
Okay, John. Okay, John, you're gonna love this, John. Ready? Bartlett High School right here, Webster,
Bartlett.
Mass. Yes.
Wow.
Now, I used to spend a lot of
So
time at Oxford.
you were wearing the green while we were wearing the orange and black.
Right. Do you remember Roger Bacon, the principal at Oxford
Absolutely.
High? I have the
Abs-
distinction of being the only person to ever get thrown out of Oxford High School that didn't go to school there because my friends snuck me into their class with them when I was a junior in high school. And I was sitting in the back of the class for a while. And then the teacher finally was like, "Who are you? Are you new here?" And they called Roger Bacon. And Roger, the principal, came down and dragged me out of the fucking school.
Get out of
No,
here.
I have to ask you, what year did you graduate from Oxford High School?
1980.
80.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, I was friends with I know this has nothing to do with what we're going to talk about, but I had
But it
some
has
good
everything to
friends.
do with what we're talking about.
Bobby Carlson, Kenny Berry, and Paul Bolio were three dudes that I hung around with from Oxford. And I went out with the girl from Oxford, Barbara Rivers. Now, the reason some of those families have a lot of kids in them, so you might have heard of some of those families.
I definitely know the Bolios. And what were the other
The
two?
Berry family, there were like 17 of them. Kenny Berry, they lived on, I don't remember the name of the street. And then Bobby Carlson lived on Walnut Street. Don't ask me how I remember that. Probably
Was
because I
he
used to.
of the big Carlson family with all the girls?
Yes, yeah. Debbie, Susan,
Like
Karen,
Cookie and
and
Chicky
Christine.
and
I remembered all four of them. That's amazing.
yeah.
But I had Donnie Thayer on my show recently, who was in a band called Pretty Poison, and Donnie and Paul Cox from Oxford. It was a Central Mass band with Jimmy D'Angelo from Worcester. I don't know if you know any of those guys, but they were in Mad Angel and then Pretty Poison, and it was around that time. Well, actually, it was before that time. They're older than you are, but Oxford.
Yeah, so that's where I came up through, and then I ended up at Berkeley, and did the Berkeley thing for a while. I actually graduated from there, but by the Berkeley thing, I mean playing only with Berkeley musicians in ensemble rooms and doing like prog rock and stuff like that. And
Wait,
then my world changed the night we went out to the Rat and we saw the Orbits opening up for Berlin Airlift. And the Orbits were a great band. They were, this funky punk band with a keyboard player. There weren't a lot of keyboard players that were doing that type of stuff back then. And then we saw Berlin Airlift and the combination of their vocals, their staging, everybody was a master of their instrument and they put on a show and we realized that okay, we got to get serious about what we're doing here because we're not gonna make it as a prog rock band. We need to refocus ourselves on something that's what's happening here now. And that's kind of where this whole story starts is, at that time I'm playing in a band and two of the guys in the band are working at Danker and Donahue Garage, which is on Newbury Street, right next to Sinclair Sound Studios, which was the studio owned by the
the
Cars.
Cars. Yeah.
And I was working at E. Wurlitzer, which is right up on the corner. It's the music store that everybody went into to get whatever they needed. So this is where we start, rubbing shoulders with the Cars. The two of the guys in my band, park their cars for a living. They work in a parking
Which
garage.
band were you in, John, at the time?
At the time, it was called Liquid Trance, and then it became Electric Toys later in the '80s.
Okay.
Um, so they're parking the cars of the cars, and I'm working at the music store, and I'm getting to know their techs that work on their gear and stuff. And one of the techs there, this guy Michael Blackmare, who in his own right is pretty well known. His father, David Blackmare, was the DB of DBX, which is all that
Oh,
in studios. Anyhow, Michael Blackmare designed my first studio in Brookline, and he was one of the techs for the cars. And that studio that got built, I ended up doing a lot of work with the area Boston artists. I had mentioned Berlin Air, that Stephen Paul Perry, who was a guitar player, ended up doing a lot of producing of bands in my studio. And I also did a stint working with Peter Wolf on his second solo record, Come As You Are. He basically wrote that whole record in my studio, and we did demos of it there. And then when it came time to record the record, we went into Synchro Sound, which
what was the name of your studio, John?
it was called Calthong Productions
Okay. In Brookline, you said, right?
in Brookline. Yeah, right in Brookline Village. And it was a little 8-track studio, but I got some, really big connections to come in. We had the Hooters in recording there, Amy Mann, Jules Shear did probably 30 songs that he recorded there. And it just became a little hot spot where, we could get really good sounding demos. And some of them even ended up getting pressed.
Nice. And
At that time, I'm running this little studio, and an opportunity comes up for this job that all these musicians seem to be getting, which is working for a publishing company, selling law books and accounting books and, professional high-end reference material. So I'm thinking, oh, it's 4 hours a day. I can work it in the mornings. I can still run my studio during hours which people are going to be in studios, which is from 3 o'clock on anyhow. So I go and get a job at this place called Warren Gorham and Lamont, which is a publishing company that had a telemarketing force in Boston back in the mid '80s.
Yeah, we use the term publishing very, very loosely, Steve.
Yeah,
It was phone sales, but yeah, we were
oh, were
publishers.
you working there too, Todd?
This is the story. This
Okay, okay,
is
okay.
I meet Todd first day of training at WGNL.
and Jesse, I think, right? Jesse
I
with
don't
me
think
yet?
he was in our
No,
class.
not
I think
yet.
he
Okay,
came a few classes later, but
right.
we
And,
go through this
and
training
I'm there on referral from this guy, right?
from Jay.
So Jay's already working there, and I'm friends with Jay. And Jay goes, "Hey, I got this great day gig."
Jay Potts?
Yeah,
The late Jay
like
Potts.
Jay Potts
Yeah, I
is
see the shirt you're wearing for people that are listening out there, or you can go to the YouTube channel and watch it. You'll see the shirt.
just another whole. Well, we'll go down that rabbit. We'll go down the Jay Potts rabbit hole in a little bit. But yeah, John, go ahead. Sorry.
So anyhow, we meet there, and we both realize that we're kind of these driven. You got to be a performer to sell on the telephone. You got to be able to put your phone voice on, and for 3 minutes become an accountant, or become a banker, or become a lawyer, and talk on the same level as these people. And the ones that it attracts are the A-type personality musicians, or actors, or dancers, or painters, or artists of all sorts. So this was like a melting pot of the Boston art scene. All during that time, Todd's going down the road of hooking up with Casey and forming Shake the Faith, and I'm running my studio and uh, taking whatever gigs come along. I had a fantastic gig fall in my lap where I got a call on a Tuesday from a band saying, "Hey, we're going on tour. We need a keyboard player who can just jump right in, and it's going to be 3 weeks, and it pays whatever, I forget what it was, um, but we need to leave tomorrow." And I was like, "Oh, well, I've heard of you guys, and sounds like a good gig. What type of venues you be playing?" I said, "Well, we play a couple of larger clubs, but it's mostly going to be arena shows and large indoor venues." I said, "Wow, that's great. I didn't realize you were at that level." I said, "Well, no, we're opening for you too." This was
Oh,
the Unforgettable Fire tour, and the band was the Red Rockers, which is a band
oh,
from
Darren
that
Hill was on my show.
located
I
in
love
Boston.
Darren. Yeah,
Yeah,
Darren Hill's been on the show.
yeah,
Darren's an
your
old
interview
friend of
with
mine.
Darren's great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I know those guys. I've met John Thomas Griffith too a few times when he was in Cowboy Mouth, but I saw the Red Rockers. Like, yeah, that's great. So you toured with the Red Rockers.
yeah, yeah. For three
Wow.
weeks, we did the opening for U2.
I remember that.
Again, we did a couple of solo shows in between. I can't even remember, all the cities we played, but it was basically down the East Coast and ending up in Miami.
Did you go to New
And
Orleans with those guys?
now,
Too
you
bad.
know,
That's their hometown.
that would have
Yeah.
been great to go to New Orleans with them, playing their home
Wow,
turf.
that's impressive, man, that you were out with them. They were like a real buzz band,
Right.
and I've teased Darren about this too. The cover of the second record, like kind of like they just completely flubbed the cover up, and it kind of they went from being a cool looking punk band to like what when the world happened with that cover, And they all
Yeah,
regret it. They know it.
I don't understand that, but somebody got in their ear and got them to do something completely out of character.
Hey Todd, you didn't tell me John played with the Red Rockers. I mean, come on.
Well, I wanted you to find out. This is the cool part of this story, Steve. So, John, you want me to kind of
Yeah, you pick it up from
he's off touring with Red Rockers, and here's the wacky connectivity of our world, the synchronicity and the tie, how it ties back to all this is that I'm up in Maine, and I'm in a little tiny band symbolically called Still Missing, right? We literally, very appropriate. And we're starting to get, the Tuesdays, the new music nights. I got us into Jax. I got us into the Rat. I got us into the big one. The one that really kind of helped me connect the dots was a new music night at the Channel. Jan Montecalvo, she had her DJ name was Janet Planet. I don't know if you
Yeah. Oh
remember
yeah.
her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So Janet really took a shining to us, and she was dating John Ryder from Face to Face, bass player. So I had befriended them because up in New Hampshire, my day gig at the time before I moved to Boston was I was working for Earcraft out of Dover, New Hampshire, a sound production company. And I was the guy loading the trucks and getting stuff out. And I was dealing with, new models, Rick Berlin, the movie, Stompers, Fools, Charlie Fahrenheit, all of the
Yeah.
kind of bands that were doing college dates all over the place. Earcraft was one of the, leading sound providers at the time. We had this brand of speakers called Turbo Sound. John, remember those? That British speaker manufacturer that came in and kind of wanted to take over America for a while. We were the rep, for them. And so I was getting everything I could do, Steve, everything that I was doing. I was living, eating, breathing. I was sleeping in my car. I was sleeping at Earcraft. I was sleeping in vans. I was literally just that guy, so fired up and ready to, be involved in music, whatever, a live show, a recording. I would make coffee at recording studios. I would sweep the floor. I would wrap cables to just be around it and absorb it. And so the paths cross when I get Still Missing to open up for Rick Berlin, the movie at UNH.
Okay.
Even takes a shine to us. We had a female singer, we had synthesizers, we had interesting parts, kind of punky, U2 and Alarm kind of wrapped into the motels in Berlin and bands that were kind of hip at that time. And Steven really liked us, and so we struck up Stephen Paul Perry. So we struck up this connection, and Steven agrees. Oh, I had been pursuing Steve Thurber from New Models to produce Still Missing's single. We wanted to do a 45, do an EP or something, and I was really wanted Casey to produce it, but not his world at all. That would just not that. It just he didn't really do that. But Steve wanted to do it, and timing wise just couldn't. And Stephen Paul Perry ended up saying, "Hey, I'll do it. I know the guys at Normandy. I'll get us some off-hour time." And sure enough, I end up at Normandy with Craig Fletcher from famously ends up doing Mercenary Audio. Craig Fletcher and Stephen Paul Perry and me kind of all engineering on Normandy's SSL on 24-track 2-inch.
Wow.
And this is all kind of coinciding with John's trajectory. We finish up that demo tape. I'm still not really rooted in Boston yet. Stephen is, partners or together with Rick at that point. And I end up at a meeting with Stephen and Rick and Mark Parento from WBCN, and Stephen really pitching Still Missing to Mark, and Mark loving one of the songs. Like, he's like, this is great. This is huge. We're going to take it to Oedipus, blah, 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 blah. I go to the final mixes a few days later down at Normandy, and the guys in Still Missing kick me out of the band. So I'm literally, bandless with a demo tape at that place in the industry. And I just go, well, fuck it. It's just time for me to move to Boston and do what I'm going to do. And so the connection continues with guys I had met doing roadie work and gig work were the New Model sound people. So friend of mine still to this day is Roger Merritt, who was tech and lighting for New Models, and Archie Dantone, their sound man, and I had stayed really tight, and Archie had helped with my band and done sound for us previously. Roger gets my tape to Casey Lindstrom, and New Models are kind of breaking up and finishing up right at that time. I was at the last Rat show that the New Models played. One thing leads to another. Completely out of the blue, my phone number scribbled on a cassette tape, and Casey somehow finds me. I'm living in my car in Boston, like at that point, working at Strawberries again, kind of doing everything you do as a musician to try to plug yourself in. I get a message from Casey Lindstrom maybe a month later. Hey, do you want to have lunch? I'd like to talk to you.
Nice.
John's finishing up his tour with Red Rockers about the same time. Our paths keep crossing between Shake the Faith getting formed and Electric Toys on their trajectory. And, years later, here we are in an interview with you. So there's a lot of filler there. If you want to get into it, the stories continue to intertwine.
I think you laid it out pretty good. So you got, like, if you two been playing together for a while now?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it circled back around. I contacted Todd when he posted some old New Models stuff up on Facebook and started promoting a reunion show that was going to happen.
There you go. So Steve, you'll remember this. Sorry, John, just to provide context. Do you remember the channel was going to do that 40th reunion deal with Sean McNally and everybody?
Yeah. You know why I was thinking it was Pipeline, but okay, I thought you were going to say it was the WMBR reunion thing, but you mean the channel reunion show?
Yeah. So the channel thing got pulled together, and miraculously, Casey and Steve Thurber had agreed to do some new model stuff with Jesse Mayer and I providing rhythm section, and then possibly a backup keyboard person. We had thought of John. So one thing led to another, and then COVID it happened right when COVID hit, and that whole thing got unfortunately slammed. But here we are. This really kind of stimulated this whole.
Oh, so I remember you talking to me about that year. You were telling me that there would be a chance that the new models and Shake the Faith would be doing like a combined thing almost.
Yeah,
that's what it was.
Harry Boris had really encouraged Casey. The new models opened the channel. They were the band that played the VIP, party that opened that club. And Harry's a huge fan. Harry was at the Shake the Faith reunion a year and a half ago.
Yeah, I can't go any further without mentioning that when I was in college radio in 81, 82, 83, I was playing Permanent Vacation regularly. I call it one of the best singles ever to come out of Boston. It was just a classic. And that's why when I met Jesse, he's the one that I met first, and he was in Finger Paint when I met him. But afterwards, he would call me when I was at Enigma Records about Shake the Faith, and he sent me the demo, which I looked for everywhere and I couldn't find. But I thought I had a cassette. I might. It's just that I have a lot of stuff. So I'm going to just fast forward a little bit here. So when holy smoke, I don't really know much about the band. When you tell
you and nobody else.
So this is like still kind of a new project. Like, is the band played a lot of gigs out?
No, not. We just timing wise, Steve, you can imagine that I'm writing songs and doing my thing. I'm Shake the Faith gets back together miraculously. These shows come up that you mentioned, the Pipeline gig. We played a Music Drives Us benefit also at the Paradise. We've done 2 reunions, both with Dez at the different Magic Rooms. We did the 2011 in Brighton and 2021 in Norwood. Dez is a big friend and fan, and basically a family member of the band. So those
For
and
people
those
out there that know. Yeah, I was going to just let my listeners know Dez is like a guy that ran Sound Museum for a long time, right? Yeah.
Dez and his wife Kathy and family now run Magic Room in Norwood, and they ran the Sound Museum for years. And I, part of my trajectory was helping Dez build some rooms at the early spaces in the South End, and getting my feet on the ground there. Anyway, fast forward to I'm raising kids. I'm up in Maine. I'm occasionally doing a Shake the Faith reunion. I had a band called Free Rider that was my recording project basically for a long time. But kids in life, Steve, it's only so much a guy can fit in. My family means everything to me. I've been married for coming up on 32 years. So that's
amazing.
Really, thank you. Yeah, it is. It's the foundation of what's gotten me here. And so, crazy story. If we got a minute, I'll fill you in on how we get here. Out of the blue, this guy from Australia reaches out to me via email. He finds a YouTube video of a cover band that I was in doing classic 60s and 70s stuff. And he's looking for a songwriter to help him write a song. I don't know what to do with the guy, honestly. And I literally try to like push the guy off. Like, I don't know what to do with him. And he keeps kind of inviting me in and really want to get this done. And geez, you're right. You're the perfect guy for the gig. So finally I just go, all right, great. Let's write a song together. So I go to my studio. I take this guy's lyrics. This guy's funny guy. And we start writing demos, and I start working on this song. And this song comes out of me that ends up being tuned in, antenna up, which you'll see on our Spotify and YouTube. And, it's now a Holy Smoke song. Absolutely miraculously, I am a fan of Rick Beato on YouTube. He's a guy that does these behind the scenes, behind the song, what makes this song great series. He's a phenomenal teacher. He's a producer himself. He's got one of my favorite engineers, Chris Lord Alge.
Oh, yeah.
Chris.
Yeah.
So he's got Chris Lord Alge on as a guest. He goes to Chris's studio, does an interview and stuff. And Chris, in the video, in the interview with Rick, says, hey, all you cats in your, home studios, you got questions, you want to talk about your music, send me your songs. So I'm the dumbass me. All right, Chris, hey, here's the song I'm working on. What do you think? 2 hours later, his manager emails me back. Chris is in. You want to work together?
Wow.
One thing leads to another. John's not fully in Holy Smoke at this point. The song's pretty much tracked, and Chris Lord-Alge says, it's great. I'll mix it. So we work on a mix. It's now out. That's tuned in, antenna up, and that sort of stimulates this whole trajectory to Holy Smoke. Start writing more songs, get energized again personally, because you got to remember, this is 2018, 19 by that point, and shortly we go into COVID hell.
Yeah.
Meltdown happens. So John and I, drummer at the time, and our guitar player is John Edwards, who's a Mainer, just start getting ideas. We start working on tracks. And so what you see up on YouTube and Spotify and our website now are all songs we've recorded together, sometimes long distance. I've mixed, and either Adam Ian at Gateway has mastered, or John and I have mastered together. John's a mastering engineer, phenomenal recording engineer. So we have this relationship that developed. And now Holy Smoke's a legitimate concern. Wearing the Jay Potts t-shirt because Jay and I go back to, again, the Jesse Mayer connection, and Jay being this person who was central to all of us back then. I just, love the guy. Worked with him, fell in love with him, huge fan of his bands. Followed him, kept in touch with him when he moved to Vegas. Always wanted to try to do a reunion show with Skin, work together, whatever. He blows back into my life right when Shake the Faith was doing our reunion. And Jay ends up in Maine, and we're sitting on 6 songs we recorded with Jay that we're now mixing and putting out soon. So
that's
Holy
fantastic.
Smoke will have, Jay Potts in the drum seat on a bunch of releases. There's Keep On Keeping On is out now, up on, out on all the streaming stuff. That's a Jay Potts jam. And so Jay, unfortunately, just out of the blue, had an incident and passed away.
Yeah.
And forced us into, well, what do we do now? And a cat from Maine, a phenomenal drummer, this guy, Luke Bergeron, walks in the door, who's just, in the drummer seat now. So we're engaged. We're really happy. We've got some gigs coming up. We'll keep you posted about that. But, Holy Smokes, it's an entity now. It's a thing that's going to happen.
Yeah, and there's a couple more things I want to talk to you about. First of all, we got to talk about this cover of the Cars song, Bye Bye Love, and which, I'm a big Benjamin Orr fan. I had Joe Milliken, who wrote Let's Go, the story of the Cars, on the show before. You guys did a great job covering that tune. What was the inspiration for that? What made you do it? I mean, I know you're a bass player and he's a bass player, so I imagine you like his bass playing, but talk about the whole thing with Bye Bye Love.
I'm so glad we got to this. So again, the intersection of lives and careers, right? So I'm a huge Cars fan as a kid. You can imagine that album hit when I was 14 years old. The Cars debut album hits. And
77, yeah.
77, right? So that hit, and I'm figuring out what the fuck music is and what it means to me. And I'm going to, freshman year in high school parties, and that album is just, owning that world. And I'm learning how to play, and I'm picking up. So I picked up bass. I got asked to play bass in a cover band I was in. And first time I ever played bass in this band, Steve, I was the lead singing bass player, because I had been the singer, and the bass player quit or something happened. I think he was a stoner and just couldn't do the rehearsals. And we had a battle of the bands thing coming up. And my high school friend basically showed me where to put my fingers on the fretboard. I didn't even know what the hell I was doing. He just said, no, this is how you do it. Just put your fingers here. You'll be fine. Just get up there, whatever. So we go play this battle of the bands. We did it, we didn't win, but we had one of those moments of like, this is fucking awesome. People loved us. And I never put the bass down after that. That was it.
Wow.
Or absolutely front and center, like huge influence on me, to the point of like, you know, really driving me to follow Casey Lindstrom's trajectory. And then he played guitar on Rick Ocasek's solo record.
Right.
You know, a lot of that stuff went through Synchro Sound, New Models, and literally pushed me into moving to Boston and becoming, you know, getting into that band and staying with it. And so lead singing bass players, yeah. And Ben just brings such an unbelievable presence to that song and the songs he sang on. And I don't think there's anybody, you know, you interviewed, I'm sorry,
Joe Milliken.
Oh yeah, you interviewed Joe in that book, and uncovering like his secret genius. You know, he was just that soul. And I got to meet him a couple times. I ended up owning one of his bass rigs when the Cars disbanded. They were getting rid of equipment. I ended up with a Ben Orr Ampeg SVT. Just a fan, a fan, man.
Me too. You
know,
know, it's really funny. I grew up here before I moved to California. And now I can't. Now I'm back here, and it was around 76, 77. The Cars were starting to get play on WAAF, Let the Good Times Roll. And they were doing a show on Western Mass at the Music Inn, which is an outdoor venue next to Tanglewood. And they were opening, I love telling this story, for the Climax Blues Band. Because I remember we went out there to see this band, the Cars, and nobody knew who they were, because they were only big with the Rat circuit and all that at that time. And Rick Ocasek is like eating a hot dog with his kid. He had a little kid with him. And we went right up to him and started talking. He was like 6'6", you know, he's a tall dude. And ever since then, I was a huge Cars fan myself, you know, and sorry to hear about, now we're missing, you know, 2 members of the band, you know.
Well, that was the impetus, is that I've wanted to cover the song for a really long time. None of the bands I've been in would indulge that, really. Famously, we Shake the Faith we covered Let the Good Times Roll for Randy Hines' benefit when he was in a bad health situation. Everybody got together and did that benefit down.
Is that the guy from the Living Room in Providence?
Yeah, the Living Room.
Yeah.
Guy who ran the Living Room and owned it for a long time.
Right.
I'm pretty sure he had cancer, and I think it was bad. I feel really terrible that I don't remember, but it was one of the first times Shake the Faith got back together after disbanding. We ended up playing Let the Good Times Roll because, you know, the spirit of the song and where we were and who we were at the time, and that was at the center of it. But lead singing bass player stuff. John, you know, goes back to the Cars and synthesizers and the importance of, you know, those harmonies and the Roy Thomas Baker productions.
I love them.
John and I are we're just, you know, completely in sync and meshed on.
Yeah, when you listen to Queen and you listen to the Cars and you listen to the stuff Roy Thomas Baker did,
mind-boggling stuff for when it was.
Well, it's beyond what you're hearing producers do today, because it was embracing the limitations of the time and pushing everything to the limit.
I loved in the there's a lot of Queen documentaries, but there's one where they interview Roy Thomas Baker, and he sort of seemed like a really lovable guy, like, you know, just his whole vibe and everything. He's explaining Bohemian Rhapsody, the interview that I saw. It was like, I can't believe that, you know, anyone that was in the room anywhere near when that was recorded, crazy.
Right. Oh, capturing like lightning in a bottle stuff, and that's that Cars record and other things he's been involved with. So John and I said, hey, you know, let's do it. I dragged our drummer at the time is a cat, really good friend of mine, John Noonan. I have to mention from Birmingham, England. Grew up in the heart of, you know, rock and roll's core.
Black Sabbath is from Birmingham, right?
And Bonham, up in Redditch. Right there. So John Noonan, a really good friend of mine, indulged me and said, hey, great, and laid down the first drums that inspired the version you're listening to now, Steve. So that's the current band. That's John Edwards on guitar, Luke Bergeron on drums, and John and I, filling out the rest.
Is there going to be an actual physical release?
So the great question. We think that how this probably works nowadays is that we release several singles, right? It's kind of a singles world. And as shows come together, if and they are, and we'll, like I said, we'll have some show announcements coming up soon. We're working on that now. Thanks to your referral, we're meeting with Michael from Bandyland, Marotta.
Oh, good,
tomorrow.
nice.
So Michael and I we're going to get together on some press and some promotional efforts and gigs and things like that. So we think that several singles. Our goal is to get a single a month out now, kicking off with Bye Bye Love. We've got 6 tracks that are, like we said, we recorded with our brother Jay. So we're honored and really excited about, getting those out, letting people experience the magic of Jay Potts, because these things are fucking bangers. They're like,
from what I heard, I really like the stuff you're doing. So
he came in the room and just kicked all of our asses and just was like, this is happening now. We're doing, he just brought Jay. He just, this guy's a steamroller. And so we're really excited about what he was able to leave behind and want to honor him that way. And then our new drummer sings as well. So it's a band with harmonies. It's a band, it's bringing all that energy that we can to it. We're committed. So I think a physical product, probably, John, maybe
vinyl,
maybe vinyl and a CD probably at some point for sure.
Cool. Well, good. I'm glad you guys came on the show. And before you go, I have to ask John one question. I don't know if you remember this, John, but Greenbrier, I think, was the name of the field in Oxford. Did you happen to go to the Steppenwolf show there? I think it was 78.
That was the first concert I ever saw.
Because when you're a kid and you're growing up and all of a sudden you hear Steppenwolf's playing in your town, because we were in Oxford was like a little, it still is like a very rural place. And
Cowtown, that's what my wife refers to it as. She's also from Oxford. And
so you were there.
Yep.
Yeah, that was incredible seeing Steppenwolf.
My first rock show that I ever went and saw.
Yeah, it was like, I don't know how many people were there, but I remember it very clearly because I was still a teenager, and I was like, holy Steppenwolf. Anyways, I had to ask you about that. It's not too often we have Webster and Oxford in the same room, or in the same Zoom. Well,
that's so funny. That's so funny.
Well, good luck, guys, man. And thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Honored. Thank you.
All righty.
Thank you.
Peace, guys.
Take care.